Hi, happy Pride. My name is Indira, and I really like this theme about the space between us. I feel like that's what poetry is all about. So this first group of poems is going to be about space between women in different situations. Proposition 1. If I were a man, I'd marry you. She laughed a blue lunar lake, mottled water rippling the thread count of my shirt beyond the corners of the room. My skin suddenly damp. She said goodnight. Simply erotic. First, remember your husband. Had talked about this in theory, and it seemed like a good idea, progressive even. He had no problem with gays, and besides, your coworker might be hot. When you have an affair with this woman, don't say anything too hetero during the experience. Not especially the words tender or soft to describe how your husband thought she might be. Actually, don't mention your husband at all. Instead, realize you've forgotten the hour and how quickly patience relaxes when her ring finger slips inside you. You're stunned by the outcome. Suddenly ordinary, simply erotic. Did anyone have to clutch their pearls? Okay, this one is called Black Capital. My braider wants to know what I'm reading. So slowly on each page she can plait enough new braids to fill her oiled fist. I tell her I am reading Karl Marx. She frowns. She says his name sounds familiar and presses a smooth palm down the length of her craft. I think about the knowledge she has accumulated through repetition. The unlimited potential of her wrist cooperating with her thumb and forefinger, the roll and twist of her labor I will wear. Never been to the beauty shop? No, I'm gonna try it out. Check it out, it's good stuff. Proposition 8. 1. The hands we don't hold. Walking a thin disguise, they ask with side glances what we produce together. 2. The hands we don't hold. Walking a thin disguise for partnership, like magnets, our sameness repels. Each time our wrists apart, straight into jackets against our gender, until your hand to me feels like cotton lining my pocket. 3. The hands we don't hold. Walking a thin disguise. Maybe the space between us is a silhouette of the daughter we do not have. These next two poems are about the distance between us here in this world and those who have passed over. This first one's called Vessel. Girl, child, use a bowl to play divination. A calabash yawns tobacco colors. Mama pours the soup into the bowl, steam, then the letters appear. Grandma had wanted to be cremated with her ashes scattered on the ocean. It's the quickest way back to where we came from, she had said. A stern cigar burning down in the corner of her mouth. That was 2 weeks ago. Girl child holds her breath, squeeze her eyes shut, black braids sway soft, dips the spoon in murmuring child songs and looks at the letters. She speaks and Mama pales. Mama, what this mean? I-H-E-R-E. Drown. Blue mussel. In the intertidal zone, your tongue is lacquered cold with mother of pearl, lips soaked with gray horizon. I press my face against the still line of your mouth, a blue mussel. Submerged in salt water, your body split against the rock where you remain bonded. So these next two poems, thinking about the distance between, distance between us and certain members of our family, it's something we can all relate to, probably. This first poem is called White Shoelaces. We were the only black family in a dining car of a southbound train across the Shasta Pass to California. White children stared at us with breakfast chewing in their mouths, small fingers peeling the skin of fruit grown below the border. I watched them. I watched them like clusters of nervous mice. My brother made small piles of salt and pepper on the tablecloth. Are different kinds of white folk. My father said slowly like foghorns. I had heard on the coast that summer. There were warnings that came out big barrel ships big barrel chests, keeping ships off rocks that were invisible at night. I looked up and he was quiet. Outside the window were branches bending from the storm that swept the past 12 hours before us. I wondered which white folk were like the snow-covered pines on the mountain, or were the whites he was talking about more like the apron our waitress wore, bleached but smeared with coffee grounds and ketchup. Maybe these whites, the ones he was seeing, were more brittle like the shells of eggs I ate. Maybe I was wrong about it. Maybe whites were soft to touch, like the space around my own dark pupils. I wonder what if he meant white like light on deep water. I wanted to ask. My father frowning now that the waitress hadn't been back to the table for a while. I looked down at my shoelaces. White like the neighbor that unclipped his pit bull when my brother and I walked by each afternoon. I was worried. Papa, I asked, which kind can I play with? Homecoming. When brother did come home, he had a swish in his voice and a nervousness in his wrist that Papa didn't like. You could see where the devil had pressed new creases down into Papa's face with his nails, and how his hatred of his son rose up in him behind his lips like foam. He took his time with little brother. On the brick stairs at the back of the house, cracking his belt in heavy arcs against the tender until brother could see the split of blue paper skies along the horizon. The roof where we used to sing, as small children, clapping, lifting our knees to twist our hips, winding ourselves up over and over until the ashen bumps of our ankles became light enough to lift out of reach of Papa's hands. next poem, these last two poems are, oh gosh, about the distance between, or space between us and all of our sort of glorious industrialized hubris and what is the natural world that we're actually part of. It's called New World. There is nothing to name in the desert. Nothing. For rough tongues to render in pieces what is part of a whole. Arms that give cool, dark shadow when rocks are too hot to rest on could not be contained in your word juniper as you say it. Cannot tell how skin peels in a fire. Does not allow for my color to grow in small populations on the mountain. Juniper's communis says nothing of hard berries swallowing the sky down to my bright clusters to be taken as medicine. There is nothing for you here, not to categorize or to count or to colonize with your word. This last poem is called A New Corn Cannot Remember, and it references a Cherokee creation story of the first woman. In the old time, Squananetla, you created all of us, planted a seed when man was sleeping, so I could grow over his heart as an ear of corn. Selu, the first woman. But new corn cannot remember my origin story. It stands in sterile rows with no relations, stalks thick enough to twist the helix into impostors for husking. New corn cannot tell how once two-legged children descending with silk and pollen in their mouths crushed milk from my kernels to make prayer tremble tassel gold. Thank you.